In this video, you'll learn about the Mexican Empire that dominated Latin America, and the Russian Empire that stretched 3 continents, and the British Empire that conquered 25% of the world, and we will go from smallest to enormous. Austria. Austria at its peak was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which spanned around 676 square kilometers across Central and Eastern Europe. It was a dual monarchy uniting Austria and Hungary, and included a mix of ethnic groups like Czechs, Slovaks, Poles, Ukrainians, and Croats. Vienna stood as a hub of art and music. It was one of the great powers of Europe, with influence stretching from the Alps to the Balkans. However, rising nationalism made unity increasingly fragile. The empire collapsed after World War I, breaking into several independent nations. Poland, during its golden age, was the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, covering roughly 1,000,000 square kilometers. It was one of Europe's largest and most populous states, uniting Poland and Lithuania. The Commonwealth was known for its unique system of golden liberty. It was home to a diverse mix of religions and ethnicities, but growing pressure from neighbors weakened it over time. Eventually, it was partitioned out of existence by Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Germany was at its largest territorial extent during World War II. Nazi Germany controlled around 3,000,000 square kilometers. After annexing Austria and parts of Czechoslovakia and invading Poland, the Third Reich expanded deep into Europe and even North Africa. Germany pursued aggressive militarization, leading to genocide and global war. Despite initial military success, the tide turned with defeats in the Soviet Union and North Africa. Germany was bombarded, occupied, and eventually divided after surrendering in 1945. The war left behind a devastated Europe and the horrors of the Holocaust. Mexico. After gaining independence from Spain in 1821, the first Mexican empire stretched across about 4.9 million square kilometers, including all of modern Mexico and parts of the American Southwest and Central America. It was a short-lived monarchy under Agustin de Iturbide, who declared himself emperor. The empire inherited Spanish colonial wealth and culture. However, the government struggled with internal division and lack of legitimacy. In just 2 years, the monarchy collapsed, and Mexico transitioned into a republic. Though brief, the Mexican Empire represented Mexico's initial experiment with sovereign rule after centuries of colonization. Those empires are just regional or continental empires, but now let's move on to even larger and more powerful empires. Italy at its peak was the Roman Empire under Emperor Trajan. The Roman Empire controlled around 5,000,000 square kilometers, from Britain to Mesopotamia. It united diverse peoples under Roman law, language, and culture. Rome was a marvel of engineering, with aqueducts, roads, and cities that still influence modern infrastructure. The empire maintained order through a powerful army, a vast network of governors, and a relatively tolerant policy toward local religions. Latin became the foundation for many European languages, and Roman law shaped legal systems for centuries. Despite civil wars and barbarian invasions, Rome left a legacy that shaped the Western world. Its fall in 476 AD marked the end of ancient history and the start of the Middle Ages. Turkey. The Ottoman Empire reached about 5.2 million square kilometers. With its capital in Constantinople, the empire spanned Southeast Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. The sultans ruled a multicultural empire through a mix of military conquest, religious tolerance, and administrative efficiency. The Ottomans controlled crucial trade routes between the East and the West, including the Silk Road and the Mediterranean. Despite internal corruption and European competition, the empire endured for over 600 years. It collapsed after World War I, leading to the birth of modern Turkey. Greece. In just over a decade, Alexander the Great forged an empire stretching 5.2 million square kilometers from Greece to India. After taking the throne of Macedonia, he defeated Persia and spread Greek culture across 3 continents. Cities like Alexandria became centers of learning, philosophy, and science. His rule marked the beginning of the Hellenistic Age. Despite his military brilliance, Alexander died young at age 32. His empire quickly fragmented, but his influence lived on through centuries of art, language, and politics. Japan. At Japan's peak, the Empire of Japan controlled roughly 7.4 million square kilometers across Asia. Driven by imperial ambition and resource needs, Japan occupied Korea, Manchuria, Taiwan, and Southeast Asia, and many Pacific islands. Tokyo became the heart of an expanding empire with a powerful military and industrial base. The empire enforced strict rule over occupied territories and committed atrocities like the Nanjing Massacre. Japan's expansion came to a halt after defeats by America in World War II. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki led to Japan's surrender in 1945. The empire dissolved, and Japan rebuilt itself as a democratic nation. France. During France's peak, the Second French colonial empire spanned about 11.1 million square kilometers. It stretched across Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific. Paris was the center of a global network of colonies, with a French language and institutions spread across the continents. The empire played a huge role in global trade and geopolitics, especially during the World Wars. Post-war decolonization movements gradually dismantled the empire. Iraq. At Iraq's peak, the Abbasid Caliphate controlled about 11.5 million square kilometers, stretching from North Africa to Central Asia. The House of Wisdom attracted scholars from across the world. The Caliphate became a hub for astronomy, medicine, algebra, and literature. It was a multi-ethnic empire that thrived on trade and intellectual exchange. While later weakened by internal strife and invasions, the Abbasids left a lasting legacy on science and global culture. Now let's move on to empires that dominated the world. Spain. At Spain's height, the Spanish Empire covered about 13.7 million square kilometers, becoming one of the first truly global empires. Following Columbus's voyages, Spain colonized vast territories in the Americas, Africa, Asia, and Oceania. Gold and silver from the New World fueled its rise, funding palaces, wars, and exploration. Spain became a global language, and Catholicism spread far and wide. Costly wars, piracy, and revolutions eventually weakened Spanish control. Many colonies gained independence, ending one of history's most influential empires. China. The Qing dynasty reached a peak size around 4.7 million square kilometers, making it the largest Chinese empire ever. Ruled by Manchu, it covered a vast population including Han Chinese, Tibetans, and Mongols. The empire expanded west into Central Asia and stabilized its borders through conquest. Trade with Europe increased through tea and porcelain, but internal corruption and resistance to modernization weakened the dynasty. By the early 20th century, revolution entered over 2 millennia of imperial rule. Russia. The Russian Empire expanded to around 22.8 million square kilometers. It stretched from Eastern Europe to the Pacific, from the Arctic to Central Asia. It was a massive autocracy with vast natural resources. Moscow and St. Petersburg became cultural and political centers of power. The empire absorbed many different ethnicities and faiths. Industrialization came late, and social unrest grew in the 19th century. The 1917 Russian Revolution ended the empire, replacing it with the Soviet Union. Mongolia. The Mongol Empire, founded by Genghis Khan, became the largest contiguous land empire in history, covering roughly 24 million square kilometers. Mongol horsemen swept across Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. Despite their brutal reputation, the Mongols established trade, communication, and cultural exchange. Genghis Khan's successors expanded the empire into China, Persia, and Russia. While the empire later fractured into khanates, its impact on history was immense and reshaped entire civilizations. The United Kingdom. At the United Kingdom's peak, the British Empire controlled nearly a quarter of the Earth's landmass, with colonies on every continent. It became the largest empire in history. London ruled over territories from Canada to Australia, India to Kenya. English law, language, and culture spread globally, as did railroads, infrastructure, and trade. After 2 world wars and rising independence movements, the empire rapidly declined. Today, many former colonies remain part of the Commonwealth, and Britain's global legacy continues to shape the modern world. Thanks for watching, and subscribe to support the channel.